Welcome to the Virtual Antics podcast, where we help entrepreneurs streamline their business to six figures and beyond. These short, sweet, and info-packed episodes will inspire, educate, and leave you feeling motivated to take one more step forward in your business. So put down your never-ending to-do list, because in this podcast, we are interviewing the best of the best in the entrepreneurial world as they spill their secrets to success. This podcast is sponsored by Nandora, the all-in-one software for entrepreneurs to grow their business with unlimited landing pages, automations, emails and text campaigns, and so much more. I'm your host, Natalie Guzman. Now let's get into it. Hey, welcome to Virtual Antics podcast. I am so excited. I'm your host, Natalie Guzman. Today I have Attaliah Strubel on the call with us. I'm so excited for this, because she's going to talk to us about one of my favorite things, which is branding. She is a personal brand business coach and globetrotting entrepreneur. She's currently in Germany, but she's always all over the place. So I'm so excited to talk to her. So welcome, Attaliah. How you doing today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thank you for coming. I'm so excited because branding, I think everyone knows they need to do it, but there's so much confusion around it, and a lot of entrepreneurs just don't know really where to start. So I'm so excited to dive into this. But first, can you tell us how you got into being a personal brand business coach?
Yes. So it was a whirlwind. So it all started when I was working bedside as a nurse, and I met my husband in Thailand, and he is from Germany. And so we lived in the US for a couple of years, and I was working full time as a nurse, like literally ready to retire from my job. Loved working. I worked in the NICU with little kids, and I was like, love it. And then he told me like he didn't really like the US, and he was like, are you open to moving? So then I was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? Nursing in Germany is different than nursing in the US. It's like I have to learn a whole new language and have to learn all of this stuff. And so then I did what anybody does, and I Googled how to make money online, and blogging came up. And so I was like, okay, I can do blogging. I can do that. Like my husband and I, we had traveled, we did all of this stuff. And it was like just something that we could seamlessly transition into. And so in 2020, February, I launched my blog with literally just a bio of what I was going to be talking about in the future. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead, do this. And I just kind of worked through it. And then as we all know, February is when the pandemic hit. And so I had planned on making a travel blog. And so then it was like, we were one of the last flights. We're leaving Seattle. So that was like the last flight I took for the next year and a half. And so it was like, okay, like, what am I going to do now? And so then I was like, let me just focus on growing on Instagram. Let me just focus on like getting people to know me. And so as I did that, I was getting personal, and I unintentionally built a personal brand. And so built that brand awareness, and people were getting connected to me. And as I continued to do it, I became more passionate about the strategy of the marketing behind business, like why somebody clicks on something, how somebody creates sales, than it was sharing, my travel journeys. And I still did share my travels, but in a way from a marketing aspect. And so by the end of that year, I went into social media management for a $1 million company. And I worked with them, and working with them made me really realize that a lot of small businesses weren't leveraging things, right? They were kind of just getting stuck in the little day-to-day task, and they weren't leveraging, or they weren't making moves because they felt that they weren't quote unquote big enough. And, working with that brand, and like realizing that I was helping them with their email strategy. I was helping them with their Instagram growth. I was helping them do all of this stuff. And I had just started 7 months, right? And it was like, okay, like anyone can do this. And as far as anyone can grow their brand, they just need the right tools. And so that's when I started helping small businesses really create that brand and get that personal brand awareness, and really get people to fall in love with them, and then have their business be a part of them.
That is absolutely amazing. And my journey started the same way with the Google search. So I absolutely love that we have that in common. That is so cool. And, it really is a powerful thing. I've seen it time and time again. And what I love about personal brands is that, it's personal. It's you, right? It's literally who you are to your core. And so your interests change. And so you don't have to, like, I love personal brand websites because you don't have to create a whole new website. You have your personal brand. You just update that one. You don't have to create a whole new business. It's literally you are the business. And so if your interests change or your focuses change, you can kind of change your personal brand. What are some other advantages to focusing and growing a personal brand?
And other than really that you can do anything is there's multiple ways to monetize. So for example, like I do business coaching, but this last month I've been working with brands. So I was able to travel with Kentucky and do a paid brand collaboration with them. Travel, we went to Spain and Portugal. I took content for them, did all of that. And I had that experience because I created a personal brand. If you were to go on my Instagram, right, I didn't have to post that content on Instagram. I was able to post that content on TikTok because that was my decision. So I think that building a personal brand allows you to diversify your income, but also, I'm a multi-passionate. So you're able to show all of those different pieces of you without feeling like, oh my gosh, like people are going to get confused. Oh, I'm not talking about my offer today. Oh my God, people are going to get confused. Like people know at all times, like I will get DMs on a random day. I have not even talked about business yet where people are like, oh my God, I want to work with you and this because I've built that personal brand and people know the different components of me and just really sticking to, because I know a lot of the times people are like, oh, you've got a niche, you've got a niche. And there's a way to be strategic when you're creating a personal brand that you don't have to only talk about one thing. It's having several things that are themed around you.
Yeah, I actually heard, I follow this guy that was Instagram, right? Instagram strategy was a lot of things. And he said something interesting that he focused on like 5 categories of his life. And those were and sometimes they would change, but those were like the things. So whether it was like family, he had his business, he had travel, just all the things that kind of made him him. Do you recommend kind of limiting yourself to different categories, or how do you be strategic with social media and showing your personal brand?
So I like to say on my feed, I have 3 main things that I talk about. So I have my digital marketing, I have my lifestyle, I'll tell you all about lifestyle and things that I'm doing, and then I have travel. So those are the 3 things that I mainly talk about on my feed. And then when I go on Instagram stories, that's when people get to know like more of me. So that's where you really dive into, obviously there's the same themes, but that is where I share my daily links. That is where I share what I'm up to. And I think a lot of the times business owners feel like they can't make like, oh, if I share my coffee, how is that helping me make sales? Like it kind of gives you something to relate to. Like, for example, I know a business coach that talked about how she like sat around waiting for Taylor Swift tickets. And then literally the next day she had a client say like, oh my gosh, I had no idea you were a Swiftie. I definitely signed up for X, Y, and Z because like, I was on the border of signing up. And so it's just those little pieces of you that you may think that are quote unquote like boring or mundane that people connect with, and that allows that connection, right? That connection makes it more personal. So when you're somebody who's solely selling, your services and you're like, oh my gosh, like, solely selling my services, that's all I'm going to talk about. Like I, as a consumer, want to know things like, oh, like what does she do on a daily basis? Like if she's selling me a course on freedom and all she's talking about is how she has freedom, like where's the embodiment? So that's when you're able to really go in there and really embody the things that you're doing and do the behind the scenes. And then the 3 things in the feed.
That's awesome. I absolutely love that. And I love stories too. I just started really getting into them. And I've seen a huge shift. I have had, like you said, clients come to me and be like, I didn't know that about you. Or that's so cool. Or like, I'm watching you. I had a client say
Mm-hmm.
that to me the other day. I was like, awesome, good. You're going to learn some stuff. So that's cool. And you're going to learn some stuff about me, which I feel like just helps that, client relationship, right? Because they feel like they actually know me, even though we never met in person for most of my clients, which is pretty cool as well. So we've talked about branding on social media. Where else should we brand ourselves?
So literally your brand should follow you wherever you're going. So even if you have, for example, I have a podcast, Socially Paid, and it's different branding, right? It looks different, but it's the original colors of my branding and aligns with my overall message. So branding isn't only like the colors, or it's not only like little specifics, it's the things that you're talking about. So if you have a blog, you want your blog to be branded. You don't want somebody to find you on the internet. Like if I'm have this podcast episode, right? And it shows up in a Google search. And then I'm on here talking about something totally random. People are going to be like, what's happening? Like, what is that? So just thinking about all of the little things that you do, like if you're a podcast guest, you want to make sure that when you're giving like those freebies or you're giving something to the audience, that whatever you're deciding to give aligns with your brand. And then also in your blog, you want to make sure that you're doing that. If you're somebody, even if you have like an Etsy shop, whatever it is that you're doing online should align. So because people begin to recognize you, right? It's like one of those things where it's like, oh my God, that's Attaliah. Like it may be a whole different thing, but the brand voice, like the way you talk. So I always say sometimes you meet someone in person and then you're like, whoa, like, who is this person? Like, this isn't the same person that I follow on social media because, you're following them, you're like getting on there. So just thinking about how you talk regularly and even in stories, like thinking about like, okay, like, or if you do a video on your sales page, like, how do you normally talk? And then bring that out. And instead of just starting your video over and over to sound perfect, like if you're stumbling over your words, that is totally normal, right? Like that's something that my community knows about me. Like I'm stumbling over my words because I have a really great idea and my brain goes 100 miles per hour. And so it's just part of just branding every piece of your brand.
Yeah, that's really smart. I was thinking about like branding too when it comes to email marketing. So when you were talking, I was like, oh man, even our emails, because that's literally like a letter from us, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's going straight into their inbox. So making sure that we are talking how we talk is super important. That's why like we recently I tried to hand over some of our email marketing to someone. They use ChatGPT. And I was like, oh, we got to train ChatGPT how to sound like me because it sounded completely off. And that's what a lot of clients come to us and they're like, man, this just doesn't sound, we had this done by ChatGPT. It doesn't sound like us. And so I think it's really, you can't train AI to sound like you. It does take some work and some effort, but you can do it. So it's not saying don't use AI, just be really mindful about using, about making sure we're training it first. But that is awesome. So what are maybe some tips or things that you see that entrepreneurs don't really do when it comes to personal branding that they should be doing?
I think the number one thing is people avoid talking about their hardships. Like people like stray away if they have like a room that's dirty, or if they're, like they're like, oh, I've got to stray away for that. And I just want you to know that you need to humanize yourself, right? We're all online. And when all of us are putting on this show, people can tell. But when you get realistic and you're just like, my office is a mess today. I'm not going to get to cleaning it, but who else's office is a mess? I bet you your DMs are going to be blowing up of people talking about how much their office is a mess and how they're so glad that you shared that. And in the same way of not only sharing the highlights, not only sharing the good things that are happening in your brand, like, yes, that shows authority, but when you're a thought leader, you want to also share the things that are difficult. You want to share if you're having a difficult time at that time. And obviously, yes, I'm not saying share every single thing on the internet, but take the time to kind of live that and then just be like, okay, like I really wanted to talk about this. And I think it's that vulnerability that really allows you to connect on a deeper level. And when you're creating a personal brand, like that's what you want, is that connection. If you're wanting to have loyal people that watch your stories every day, or if you're wanting people that buy from you the second that you drop whatever offer you have, it's because they're connected to you in another way. You want to think also about the type of content or the type of people that you see, like what things attract you to them. And when you think about that and you're like, oh, like I'm attracted to them because of this, you begin to see that you're attracted to them because of the thing, not the things they share on their feed. You're like watching their stories and you're attracted to things that they're doing behind the scenes and that they're sharing. So just remembering to share, being vulnerable, remembering to share the behind the scenes and the process. And I think a lot of times you just want to show up when everything's done, but people want to see the process. Like, I want to know that you're starting a podcast, and then I want you to take me through like what it is that you're doing, or if you have any hiccups, like I want to know about that, because then when your podcast comes out, who's going to support you? I am, because I know how hard you worked. But I think a lot of us are doing so much work behind the scenes and we feel like it needs to be behind the scenes. But when we share that journey with others, that allows people to see like, oh my God, she puts a lot of work into her art. And then they're going to want to support you. They're going to want to buy from you. They're going to want to work with you.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I see it time and time again, and the more that we show up and just be our natural selves, and then that's when all the good stuff starts coming to us without us really having to work as hard either. And all we're doing is just showing up and being ourselves, and showing up consistently too, I think is a really big part of it. So, that is awesome. So now I kind of want to know more about how do you coach people? So do you do like one-on-one sessions? Do you do group coaching? Tell me what it looks like when someone hires you as the personal brand coach.
So I have a membership, which is more of like a group setting, and it is a content monetization membership where we really focus on how you can create content to monetize your platform, right? Because I think a lot of the times people are doing all this, like content is a lot of work and you deserve to be paid. So we really go over the 7 different streams, and you're able to kind of like ask questions inside of the community, get support from people in there. And then I also do like strategy, one-off intensive sessions. If you're somebody who's like, oh my gosh, like my personal brand is a mess, or I don't have a personal brand, or I don't know what my brand story is, then we really sit down and we map that out. And then we create content to really go towards attracting whoever your ideal client is. And then I also work with people one-on-one coaching, where we really have a holistic approach. So my coaching isn't just, oh, like this is what your brand is and this is what you need to talk about. It's more of like, who are you as a person, and how can we put who you are when I talk to you into your content? How can we translate that so people understand and they see you for who you are and they buy what you have to offer? And in that one-on-one too, we work on different offers, creating that product suite, really getting in alignment of the different ways to create income, because I'm a sole believer in multiple streams of income from your brand, because I just don't ever want to rely on one stream of income.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I say a lot on the podcast, is that the average millionaire has at least 7 streams of income. So I love that you said 7 streams, because I was in my head, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I preach. So that's awesome. I absolutely love that. And plus, especially if, something like, God forbid, hopefully it doesn't happen, but like the pandemic hits and, you had to kind of switch paths, having the different streams of income is super important, because if one isn't working or profitable, then you can switch to the next. And it gives you a lot more freeway, you can just kind of shift your focus. But always having multiple is definitely a really good business strategy. I absolutely love that. So how can we find more about you and your services?
Of course, you can find me on all social platforms, Attaliah Strubel. And then my blog, if you're looking for like digital marketing information, travel information, or just want to know more about me and my life, that is at www.attaliastrubel.com. I am also on TikTok. Me and my husband, we have a family TikTok. It's called The Strubel Family. And then if you're wanting to tune in to the podcast, it's called Socially Paid. We are on all streaming platforms.
Also, I'll make sure I put all that in the show notes as well. But thank you so much for coming on the show, Talia. It's been so much fun. And we'll talk to you guys next time on the Virtual Antics podcast.